Russia's underworld has a reputation for being ruthless, and some of the most shocking moments have been captured on camera. From a simple bump in a nightclub that turned into chaos, with a gangster taking out multiple people, to the cold-blooded assassination of a Mafia boss during his own celebration, these events reveal the violent world of organized crime. Today, we explore the most disturbing Russian Mafia encounters ever caught on tape, revealing the darker side of organized crime in Russia. Chaos at the pizza place. Imagine enjoying a quiet evening at your favorite pizza spot when chaos erupts. That is exactly what happened in Krasnodar Krai, near the Black Sea, when a gang of masked men stormed a restaurant, leaving shattered glass and bruised staff in their wake. CCTV footage showed the terrifying scene unfold. Several men in masks burst through the doors, swinging baseball bats like they were trying out for the league. In a matter of minutes, the restaurant transformed into something out of a crime thriller. Tables and chairs were smashed to bits, and employees who tried to intervene were beaten. The aftermath wasn't pretty. 4 staff members were hurt, 2 seriously, and the damage was estimated to be over £20,000. Locals were left shaken, not just by the violence, but by what it symbolized. Police strongly suspect the attack wasn't random. They believe the mob was sent by a gangster to teach the owner a lesson about skipping payments in what seems like a protection racket. It's hard to imagine what the customers went through, witnessing their favorite hangout turned into a battleground. And while the dust may have settled, questions still hang in the air. What happens when the police catch up to whoever ordered this? But don't get too comfortable. In another part of Russia, a scene even more dramatic was unfolding. Crime boss caught. The quiet of a luxury Moscow mansion was shattered when one of Russia's most infamous figures found himself in handcuffs. Zakhary Kalashov, often called Gangland Putin for his reputation, was at the center of an intense raid by the Federal Security Service. This wasn't a quiet knock at the door either. The £20 million estate turned into a crime scene as officers unearthed a stash of weapons, including handguns and grenades. Kalashov, sitting in his sleek kitchen, was recorded accusing the officers of creating drama for show.
Фамилия, имя, отчество.
Я ничего не буду говорить.
Вы являетесь ли вором в законе?
His frustration might have been understandable, but it was hard to feel sorry for a man whose mansion was practically an armory. Outside, his army of bodyguards had it worse. They were sprawled face down on the cold ground under strict watch. It was clear this wasn't their day. This arrest comes after years of tension surrounding Kalashov's alleged activities. Authorities claim he was linked to a deadly 2015 restaurant shootout in Moscow that left 2 dead. Beyond this, accusations of extortion hang over his head, tying him to organized violence. But it doesn't end there. Talks of Kalashov's ties to senior figures in law enforcement raised eyebrows. Some suggest this FSB raid isn't just about justice, but could be a move in a deeper power struggle within the Kremlin's ranks. And speaking of power struggles, another intense confrontation involving a high-profile figure unfolded at one of Russia's most prominent companies. Office bloodbath. The Wildberries headquarters in Moscow was the site of absolute chaos when Vladislav Bakalchuk, estranged husband of Russia's richest woman, Tatiana Bakalchuk, showed up with armed men. What unfolded was far from a simple business dispute. It was a violent showdown caught on camera. Tatiana, the billionaire CEO of Wildberries, later said Vladislav and his group of gangsters had broken into the building and opened fire, calling it an attempt to seize control of the company. The office erupted into gunfire, turning what should have been an ordinary day at work into a full-blown bloodbath. By the time the dust settled, 2 security guards were dead and 7 others were injured. Security staff had clashed with the armed men, leading to a tense and tragic standoff. Authorities quickly detained Vladislav, charging him with murder, attempted murder, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and vigilantism. Of course, both sides pointed fingers. Vladislav claimed it wasn't his group that started the shooting, insisting it was the office staff who fired first. Tatiana, however, denied there was any scheduled meeting and accused him of attempting a hostile takeover. While investigators work through the details of this violent event, another unsettling encounter with the Mafia is brewing elsewhere. One-man army. In the small town of Starokosunskaya, 3 gangsters learned the hard way why you shouldn't mess with the wife of a professional boxer. Nikolai Vlasenko is not just a boxer, but also a martial arts expert. Let's just say he doesn't take kindly to people harassing his wife. The trouble started when Nikolai stepped away to the bathroom. When he returned, he found some local thugs trying to drag his wife into a VIP room. Calm but firm, he told them to back off. The self-proclaimed leader of the group, trying to act tough, suggested they step outside to settle things. That was a mistake. CCTV footage outside the bar shows Nikolai taking on the men like a scene from an action movie. In seconds, he knocked out the first 3, while the rest of the group quickly changed their minds about being brave. Instead of fighting, they rushed to help their unconscious friends sprawled on the ground. But the drama didn't end there. The gang, clearly unhappy about their bruised egos and faces, hired a lawyer and filed a complaint, claiming they had been attacked. Police, however, didn't seem too concerned. After reviewing the CCTV footage, they decided not to press charges, saying Nikolai had clearly acted in self-defense. And considering he was up against nearly a dozen people, it was hard to argue otherwise. While Nikolai walked away a hero in the eyes of many, this isn't the only jaw-dropping moment caught on camera in Russia recently. In another part of the country, commuters at an underground train station witnessed a horrifying confrontation involving Mafia members. Subway ambush. A quiet subway ride in Moscow turned into chaos when 2 men unleashed a violent attack in front of stunned commuters. Security cameras captured the chilling moment, leaving no room for questions about the brutality of the act. The attackers, sitting calmly at first, seemed just like any other passengers, but then one nodded to the other and leaned in for a quick exchange. Without warning, they drew their guns. The older man took the lead, firing a handgun into the abdomen of an unsuspecting passenger. As the victim fell, the attacker kicked him and fired again, this time pressing the gun to his head. The other passengers could do nothing but watch in horror. After the attack, the men turned their backs on the victim but kept their guns drawn, issuing more threats before fleeing the train at Nagornaya station. The victim was rushed to the hospital. He suffered severe injuries, including a bullet in his jaw and serious facial damage. Miraculously, he survived. The footage is both chilling and shocking, leaving many wondering how such violence could unfold in a crowded public space. As shocking as this event was, it is not the only jaw-dropping tale coming out of Russia. Let's just say that when a fearless man crossed paths with an old woman in distress, he left behind a story that deserves its own round of applause. Street justice. This video begins with a man rushing down a footpath, drawn by the piercing screams of a woman nearby. Without hesitation, he turns toward a grassy area where a thug has pinned an 8-year-old woman to the ground. Acting quickly, the man films the scene with one hand while delivering a swift kick to the attacker's head with precision that would make a footballer proud. The blow knocks the thug off the elderly victim, giving her a chance to breathe. Not stopping there, The rescuer shouts furiously at the attacker and lands another solid kick to his head. The thug stays on all fours, clearly outmatched and unwilling to fight back. After a few more hits, the man turns his attention to the frail woman lying in the mud. She is disheveled, bleeding from the mouth, and trembling from the ordeal. The rescuer gently helps her to her feet. Her injuries are severe: broken ribs, head trauma, a dislocated arm, and missing teeth, all signs of the brutal assault she endured. While most would call the man a hero, the story takes an unexpected twist. The attacker, apparently unhappy with the beating he received, filed a complaint against the man. Shockingly, the police ordered the rescuer to pay 5,000 rubles for his actions. Still, the man stood by his choices, saying he had no regrets. He believed that saving Clara's life and health was worth far more than any fine. As for the thug, he was placed in custody, likely to face justice for the brutal attack. Elsewhere, another violent encounter involving Mafia members unfolded in a way that is equally chilling. Moscow Mafia Showdown. It started like any other evening in central Moscow, but by 9 p.m., chaos had taken over. A gunfight erupted near a Korean restaurant called Elements, leaving 2 men dead and 8 others injured. What unfolded was described by onlookers as savage and almost unreal. This footage explains why. It seems like the Russian mafia had decided to settle a score, though no one knows exactly what sparked the fight. Witnesses reported seeing several black cars parked along the street. It was a sight that rarely means anything good. The tension built fast. 2 groups stood facing each other, voices growing louder, until the shouting turned into something far worse. Within seconds, the sound of gunfire echoed through the street. Some witnesses said there were at least 20 people involved, a mix of shouting, shooting, and chaos. Following the chaos, the attackers eventually scattered. Police arrived shortly after, sealing off the area and trying to figure out what had triggered the violence. The motives remain unclear, but it looks like a feud between powerful groups boiled over in the worst way. Elsewhere in the city, another altercation with gangsters was brewing, but this one had no guns, only fists, rage, and the kind of trouble that can only unfold in a packed nightclub. Now, it's time for today's subscriber's pick. The image we are looking at shows a chaotic moment, caught on what looks like security footage. A man is firing a gun at another person who is running to escape. In the foreground, someone wearing a long coat and a blue hat also seems to be fleeing. The raw energy of the scene makes it feel intense and dangerous, like something out of a crime thriller. Scenes like this are often linked to stories about the Russian Mafia, a criminal organization known for its violent and ruthless tactics. These groups are involved in everything from smuggling to extortion and have a reputation for handling conflicts through force. Images like this make it easy to imagine how dangerous it could be to cross paths with them. The Russian Mafia isn't just a local problem. They have been known to operate globally, running illegal businesses and clashing with law enforcement. Situations like this show how dangerous their world can be, not just for those involved in crime, but for innocent bystanders too. Have you ever wondered how communities live under the shadow of organized crime? Do you think there's a way out for people trapped in these dangerous worlds? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The nightclub Terminator. What happens when someone bumps into the wrong guy in a Russian nightclub? A scene straight out of an action movie, apparently. In the early hours at Studio Private Place, a nightclub on Karl Marx Street in Moscow, chaos erupted. CCTV footage shows a crowded dance floor where 2 men accidentally bump into each other. For most people, this might end with an awkward apology. Not here. The larger man, who apparently is a gangster, turned, threw a punch, and hit the smaller guy in the face. Things escalated fast, and the smaller man tried to push back. When a friend of his stepped in to break up the fight, he got knocked flat too. The larger man, now fully on a rampage, started swinging at anyone nearby. One by one, 3 more men hit the floor, each faster than the last. The brawl moved off the dance floor into the seating area, where 2 more men tried to step in. Big mistake. They both ended up on the receiving end of this man's fists. By the end of the chaos, 3 men were left unconscious on the dance floor, while others stumbled away nursing injuries. 2 of the men had to be treated in the hospital. One suffered a fractured skull, and another left with head and facial injuries. Meanwhile, the attacker might be facing up to 8 years in jail if the charges stick. All this because someone bumped into him. That's right, just one accidental nudge, and this man flipped from enjoying the party to taking down everyone around him like some sort of nightclub Terminator. It's the kind of overreaction that makes you rethink standing too close to anyone on a dance floor. In another part of the country, another wild scene was playing out. Snowball showdown. Ever seen a car chase with snowballs as weapons? Only in Russia. In the Far East, a gangster decided to make a break for it in a stolen car. The police, clearly not expecting this, had to think fast, but instead of spikes or a roadblock, their plan involved snowballs. Yes, snowballs. The footage starts with 2 officers standing on opposite sides of a 2-lane road. As the car barrels toward them, they scoop up handfuls of snow and start hurling it at the vehicle. The snowballs hit their target, but let's be real, snow isn't exactly bulletproof glass or reinforced steel. The car barely slows down and roars off at full speed. Meanwhile, the police vehicles spring into action, chasing after the suspect. The snowball throwers? They're left standing there, probably wishing they'd gone for a better strategy, or maybe they were just hoping for a miracle. Hours later, the suspect was finally caught and detained. But let's be honest, the highlight of the whole thing wasn't the arrest. It was the sight of grown officers in full uniform chucking snow like kids in a schoolyard fight. You have to admire the effort, though. It's not every day you see law enforcement go from serve and protect to aim and throw in the middle of a high-speed chase. And speaking of unexpected chaos, what happened in Moscow was even more shocking. Something far darker and more violent. Concert turned carnage. It started like any other night, the kind where people leave their worries at the door and dive into music and fun. But in Moscow's outskirts, a concert hall became the stage for something no one saw coming. Crocus City Hall was buzzing. Fans packed the venue, ready for a rock concert to blow the roof off. Instead, it was chaos that ripped through the night. Out of nowhere, armed men in camouflage stormed in, rifles at the ready. The foyer was the first to erupt, shouting, running, and gunfire that didn't stop. Inside, things got worse. Videos later showed men with rifles moving through the halls like they were playing some sick, real-life war game. Another clip revealed flames licking up the walls, with gunshots echoing in the background. A panicked voice said the attackers had set the place on fire, and the proof burned brighter than any stage lights. The rooftop told its own horrifying tale. Smoke billowed as some concert-goers climbed up there, desperately waving and calling for help. Down below, people crawled on all fours to escape, while others bolted down stairwells, their screams drowned out by gunfire. It wasn't the kind of show anyone had paid to see. By the time it was over, more than 60 people were dead. Health officials reported 145 injuries, 115 of them bad enough to need a hospital bed. 5 children were among the hurt, their lives now marked by a night that should have been just about loud guitars and good times. And yet the numbers didn't even tell the full story. Some reports spoke of more victims trapped in the fire, started by explosives hurled by the attackers. It was a deadly game of guess who behind it all. The Islamic State claimed responsibility on Telegram, saying their gunmen had slipped away like shadows in the night. But was it them? Some pointed fingers at Russian organized crime. Whoever it was, they left a wound that Moscow won't soon forget. It was the kind of event that leaves you shaken, like a hard slap from reality. Still, life moved on, as it always does, and so did the chaos elsewhere. Russian hooligans attack on street. It's not every day you see streets turn into battlefields, but that's exactly what happened in Marseille during Euro 2016. The city was suddenly shaken by an outbreak of violence so extreme it felt like a scene from an action movie. Russian hooligans, organized and determined, stormed the streets with an unsettling kind of precision. What started as a lively atmosphere quickly turned into chaos. The Russians didn't rush in like you might expect. Instead, they jogged in formation, a well-coordinated display that looked more like a war drill than a random group of men out for a stroll. As they neared their targets, they armed themselves with whatever they could find: bottles, poles, and chairs. No one was ready for what came next. When they finally reached the English fans, chaos erupted. Metal poles cracked against heads. Chairs flew through the air and bottles smashed. Punches rained down, and soon the streets became a battleground. The Russian thugs didn't stop there. They kicked and stamped on their victims, even when they were down. It was brutal, with no mercy. One of the most shocking moments in the footage shows the attack on Andrew Bach, a 51-year-old England fan from Portsmouth. He was left in a coma after the violent assault. The video of the attack didn't remain hidden for long. The thugs themselves posted it on YouTube, almost as if they were proud of the destruction they caused. The footage shows just how planned this attack was. It wasn't just about scaring the England fans, it was about causing real harm. The victims, who had been peacefully drinking in the city center before the match, never saw it coming. The attackers didn't just want to cause trouble, they wanted to leave a mark. It was as much about sending a message as it was about the violence itself. These weren't random fights. This was something bigger, darker, and more organized. Marseille would never forget the chaos that unfolded that weekend. And just when you think you have seen the worst of human nature, another scene emerges, where no one saw the attack coming, not even its target. Siberian gangster assassinated. Imagine a quiet night, the kind where most people are winding down and getting ready to rest. But for Alexander Jestakov, it was anything but that. The clock was nearing midnight, and what was supposed to be a celebratory night for Jestakov quickly turned into something far more chilling. Jestakov, rumored to be the leader of the feared Zapsibovsky gang, had been hosting a party at Zambul Bar in Novokuznetsk, a city tucked away in southwest Siberia. It was meant to be a celebration, a party to mark his release from prison. But things quickly spiraled into chaos. In the footage, you can see Jestakov chatting with a few people, clearly in a good mood. He didn't know that the danger was already close. The assassin, dressed in black with a hood and dark glasses, approached without anyone noticing at first. He moved quickly, carrying a firearm with a large silencer. Then, the moment changed everything. The assassin raised his gun and fired several shots, hitting Jestakov with cold precision. The CCTV footage captured it all. Jestakov collapsed almost instantly, his body hitting the floor with a thud. For a few moments, confusion took over. Jestakov's associates, still in shock, couldn't quite understand what had just happened. The killer, not wasting any time, quickly left the scene, disappearing into the night. The chaos that followed gave him the perfect cover to escape unnoticed. His associates were frozen, unsure of what to do at first, but within seconds, the shock wore off, and panic set in. They scrambled, fleeing the restaurant as quickly as they could, leaving behind the body of their boss and the destruction of the night. Before that night, Jestakov had already lived a life of danger. In 2013, he was caught in Moscow with a fake Moldovan passport, a red flag for authorities. They suspected he was the mastermind behind a criminal gang involved in real estate fraud, the illegal drug trade, black market metal sales, and bribery. Yet no one ever came forward to testify against him. His reputation was strong enough to keep witnesses quiet. But the shooting that night wasn't just a random act of violence. It came at a time when rumors of a rise in organized crime in Russia were circulating. Some believed that Jestakov's gang might have been involved in a larger growing problem in the region. This wasn't an isolated event. It was part of something much bigger. The attack itself wasn't the only shocking part. The way it happened shows just how dangerous the world of organized crime can be. As we look at this footage, it's hard not to think about how many more untold stories like this are out there. What drove this assassination? Was it revenge, business, or something else? And more importantly, what happens after? Whatever the answer, the night's events have added another layer to Russia's unfolding criminal underworld. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.